Inside Healthcare, we begin by talking about Minnesota's record number of air quality alerts this season, and also some important new Minnesota environmental reforms and investments to combat climate change here in our state. And we are honored to have with us Senator Nicole Mitchell, and she's a meteorologist, and she is also with the Air Force veteran and state senator serving in the Minnesota Senate. So really a pleasure to have you with us. And first of all, thank you for your service.
Oh,
you do.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here and to help our state in so many ways.
Yeah, and there's so much right now when we're talking about the weather and the climate and stuff. So as a meteorologist, your thoughts and comments about these record number of air quality alerts that we've seen here in Minnesota. What do you think about?
Unfortunately, I think we're going to be seeing more of that as we go into the future, because if you just remember 2 years ago, we also had fires in Canada and even in the Arrowhead. And when the wind is just right, it brings that smoke in. So 2 years ago, we had a number of records, had set the worst air quality record one day, and then just a few days later, we reset it at an even higher level. This year has been really unprecedented. There was a point where we had the worst air quality in the country.
Oh, that was terrible. Yeah,
yes.
We don't want to make national headlines that way.
Yeah, no, you don't. And that's an unfortunate side effect of climate change, is when we get hot so early in the summer season, we start to head into drought right away. And so we're having another very dry summer, and this is kind of turning into a pattern for us, and then that exacerbates the fires, and then we have the smoke.
Wow. So what advice or tips do you have for people to stay safe if we have, as you said, most likely have some more of these, these record air quality alerts and things like that?
I mean, you really just need to stay in when it's that bad. I have small kids, and for example, if they're playing a sport, their lungs are developing, they're taking deep breaths. So if they're playing something like soccer, you don't want all that particulate in your lungs in that way, and for any sensitive group especially. But yeah, if you can stay in on those really bad days, and then long term, we need to seriously address climate, not just the things that we'll do now that will help down the road, but improving our water and our air now, so that when we do have these days, maybe they're not as bad if we're not also contributing on the pollution side.
Absolutely. Some of those other concerns that you must have for these extreme weather conditions and stuff, and other things that maybe we as families can be doing to protect ourselves.
Well, so our weather is changing as the climate changes. If you, again, think back to 2 years ago, for the first time ever in Minnesota, we had a tornado in December, the latest we've ever had it. So we need to be more aware of the weather, because we're going to start having more of these extremes. When we do get rain in the summer, it'll be drier overall, but a hot atmosphere can hold more moisture. So then we talk about the potential for flood, which seems like a contradiction, that we can be in a drought, but when we have rain, it could cause flooding. Yeah. But that is one of those scenarios. So we need to be more prepared overall. And again, this is a good reason why we want to think long term. If you're a farmer, that might impact what crops you plant or how you manage, and just in our own homes, thinking about the impacts to us locally.
I think locally we were hearing about the strawberry crop and pineapple orchard. Like they had to close it early this year.
Yeah, it's
unfortunate. I think they said for the first time, I think they had said so. So talking about long term, in the state legislature, major activity, I should say, a lot of things having to do with environment and the energy and climate, and you are also on the committee that has a lot to do with that. So as I said, there was a lot. Maybe you can kind of talk about some of the most significant things that were decided and approved and stuff like that.
I mean, because it was an amazing list, I could be here for the whole show just talking about some of the things that got done. So I think clean energy, really making that commitment that by 2040 we were going to try and be carbon neutral as a state is amazing that we were able to do that. There were a lot of initiatives. I carried some of them for electric vehicles, making sure we have more charging stations around the state, and more investments so that they're more affordable for everyone if people want to go that route. A lot of solar expansion, whether it be on schools or people
Public
being able,
buildings?
yep, public buildings, people to be able to do it in their own homes, and also looking at our grid, right? So that if people are adding more of that in, we have the capability to manage some of that energy as we provide it. So a lot of amazing things that got done.
And there was some incentives and rebates and grants in some of those areas as well?
Yes, so for schools, just as one example, there was a large investment both in being able to put solar panels on the schools, but also more communities being able to get electric buses so the kids don't have to sit, especially if the bus is idling, with that diesel smoke around them, so that they can have a cleaner environment.
And then some of the other things when you were talking about the other renewable sources with the solar and wind and things like that, other things that are on the horizon that we're looking at for schools and for buildings in addition to that?
Yes, so again, just being able to have more green spaces for everyone to enjoy. The solar initiative will be great. Some of the community solar gardens, so that if someone can't do it in their own home, they can maybe invest in one of those. The rebates for, again, people to be able to put them on their own homes will be nice, and that will stay in place. Because we don't just want a certain segment of the population to be able to get involved. So if we can make energy efficient appliances, solar panels, electric vehicles more accessible to any income bracket, I think it enables people to feel more invested in the environment around them.
Another thing that was discussed was the forever chemicals, the PFAS and stuff, making national news. I think I read they were saying, a new government study saying how rivers are everywhere in the country have these forever chemicals in them. And what are some of the things that we're looking at here in Minnesota to reduce
So
that?
I live in Woodbury, and that's been something we've really struggled with in our community, having a number of our water towers go down because they haven't met the standards. So there was both investments in water treatment facilities at different parts of the state to make sure people currently have clean water, and then the PFAS legislation itself, because one of the concerns is a potential link to cancer. And so, we don't want that happening to our water. So PFAS is in some of the firefighting foam, so making sure that for training purposes,
Absolutely.
that's not being used. Still having the tools we need for actual fires, but we don't need to be using some of these things all the time. Taking them out of some packaging and some different products that they don't necessarily need to be in. Just other ways, and I know that 3M, separate from the state legislator, has made a commitment within the next couple years to quit making products with PFAS. So that overall commitment will help our water for future generations.
It feels like Minnesota's at the forefront of all of that.
We're
leading
trying to
that.
be.
Yes, absolutely. Another thing that the state lawmakers, and including yourself, worked on investing more in some of our natural resources. What are some of those things, and what are those areas that you're looking at?
So some things that I think were really creative. For example, there's some of the buffer areas by highways, putting in these like pollinator areas and kind of putting in a land buffer so that we can help
For
our
the
pollinators.
biodiversity, yeah.
Yes. We're also investing more in our state parks, making sure that those great places for people to go are out there. And also just some rules for cities that if people want to have a pollinator garden or something else, relaxing it a little bit, so to speak, so that people can kind of do some of those things in their own yards.
Well, it's amazing all of the work that you've been able to do so far. Any other comments that you'd want to talk to our viewers about the biodiversity, what they can maybe do in their home or in their neighborhood or in their communities?
Right, so any little bit helps. Obviously, hopefully keep electing people who have a long-term plan for what we can do. But, in my family, we compost, we try and recycle. Just those little things really help the environment. I was way behind in my garden because we were so busy with the legislative session.
Oh my gosh!
But I found
can't believe we got anything done.
I found some. It's still kind of messy. I found some natural milkweed that was growing, and I just left it. You know, I worked around it, and now we have monarch butterflies, and we've even raised.
Oh,
a
I
couple.
love that.
Even just conserving water, especially as we talk about those drought things, and just being mindful of the resources you use. All of those things can really make a big difference.
Any final comments or where people can get more information?
If you have any specific questions, you can always contact my office. Even in the off session, we have meetings. There's also some great, so many projects came from different places. So some are, you know, the DNR, the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. It kind of depends on what the topic is. And then there's great groups out there like Clean Energy that are kind of helping lead the way on renewables. So yes, if you want more information on a specific topic, get a hold of my office or look up maybe one of those great groups.
Well, it really has been a pleasure to have you on Inside Healthcare. We really appreciate it, and valuable time too. You were saying you're with the Lieutenant Colonel with the Air
Yes,
National
I'm about
Guard.
to leave for
You have to
weekend
go.
duty.
So taking time to be with us, we really appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Thank you.